you want some rust on your project, one way to do it is with natural rust, real rust. This really should be done probably weeks in advance to get a really solid, broken down rust. But here I'm doing it about 5 days early, and all I'm doing is taking some steel wool in a glass jar and filling it with vinegar. Doesn't really matter what kind of vinegar I use, distilled white vinegar. You're going to need to let it sit. Do not put a lid on it because it exudes noxious gases, so it needs to be left outside in a covered area. I suppose you could also just put holes in your jar lid, but eventually you're going to be able to cover that jar after the reaction finishes, which will take a few days. Now, the day before I started to use it, I added a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, and you'd see it bubble up as well. Let that vape off, and then I was able later to close the jar, which the reaction still continues. You get some gooey stuff. Eventually, the steel wool will break down over a long period of time, and you can keep it for a long period of time. And when you apply it, it doesn't look like a whole lot until it dries out. And it does look like rust because, well, it is rust. Here are a few images of some French cast iron planters with the finish that I am looking at, with rust and paints, chipping paints, cracked paints. I especially like this last one in the color tones, and I may be looking at doing that on this planter. I've taken my box and my products out to my husband's shed/workshop. It's easier to set up the camera here. My first step in this process is to create some texture. Now, I need a lot of texture on the inside of this box. And I need just a finer texture on the outside. So on the inside, I am using some watered down glue and just used coffee grounds and a bit of sand and sprinkling that all over the inside of the box. As I mentioned, on the outside of the box, I want a little bit smoother texture like you would see on a cast iron product. So I am choosing to use Deco Arts texture paste. It's sand texture paste. I'm not only applying it on the flat wood sections, but I'm also applying some on the molds, just over the entirety of each side of the planter here. Also using it to kind of fill in where there are gaps that I don't want, like where I had put those quarter circles of clay where they are touching the edge of the wood. I want it to look like one piece, so I'm kind of using that texture paste as a filler for those cracks. Now, while the texture paste is still tacky, I will sprinkle just a few coffee grounds and a little bit of sand here and there to give a little bit thicker texture, and it will probably be in those spots where I create more rust, because that's what rust looks like. It starts to erode and bubble up that metal. is my goopy mess that I started 4 or 5 days ago with the steel wool. I'm actually going to take that out for a moment. If you leave this long enough, like for months, it will eventually degrade the steel wool and you'll have particles. My brush is too big. Don't have another one out here. But I want the bottom of this and the inside of this to look very rusty. I will have parts of the front that look rusty too, and that's where I'm going to use my bottle of magic. But it's a tiny bottle and it's expensive product. So I'm using stuff that's cheap right now to create rust. And if this doesn't do enough, I can always add some faux finishing techniques to it. I did add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide this morning to this bottle, just to give it a little more fizz action going on. Oxidation of the steel wool. Now this doesn't look like much right now. We're going to have to let it dry, and then we'll see how much it looks rusty. It's not going to have just a ton of variation of color, so I probably am going to have to use a few other techniques to get it there. I'm really not concerned that much about the bottom. This is almost more of my test. I'm going to let this dry before I move to the inside of the box. And of course, it's wanting to beat up on me a little bit because it's an oil-based paint and this is just vinegar. Well, you can see here it does take. It does work. Just a nice coloring. I did the bottom and one of the sides, not all of them. But I can already tell this is just not going to do it. I am going to have to faux finish and add a bunch more goop, including dirt, in here. I want to get the inside done first before I start the outside part. So that's what I'm going to do now with some acrylic paints and some dirt. As you can see here, it didn't take very much. And that's my fault because I did flip it over instead of letting it dry. I flipped it over and a lot of it just dripped off because I wanted to do the inside edge. You can see a few spots, but I'm going to start on this bottom so that you can see what I'm doing a little better because our electricity is out right now. Don't know why. I've reported it. And I have no overhead lights. So here's some colors that I have. I've got bittersweet chocolate because I need a brown. I've got some ochre yellow, red oxide, rather important color for rust, Italian sienna, and autumn brown. These aren't a whole lot different. This is a little bit deeper. I'm just going to pour them out on a little tray. And we're going to start. All right, this is going to be working wet on wet. Start with my brown. I'm just going to work in sections. Up some of the red oxide. Tiny bit of the ochre yellow. This is the Italian sienna. I'm just grabbing colors, grabbing some red oxide, grabbing some more brown. This is just some sifted potting mix. Really don't want the vermiculite or the perlite in it, but I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit. I'm using a kind of a clean, different brush. I'm just gonna pounce that dirt in there. Ah, we have electricity. Yay, the lights just came back on. Thank heavens for electricity. I'm gonna keep working. lot going on, relatively speaking, on the outside of this piece. There will be rust. There will be peeled paint. There will be crackled paint. There will be kind of distressed paint. All of the paints will be with 3 different techniques. But for the crackle paint, I need something dark behind it. I really don't want the metallic to show. So I'm going to pick some places where I'm going to go ahead and faux rust some spots where I will be putting the Crackle Medium prior to the paint. Real rust. See how that white stuff, oxidation, happens as it corrodes? Let's have a little fun. That really blotchy, corroded looking thing is baking soda that I threw on and then sprinkled, well, no, I put the vinegar mix on first and then sprinkled some baking soda. I think it looks pretty cool. So I am going to add a little bit of this rusty stuff. I'm just gonna kind of spread it around in this bottom, maybe up on the side some. I'm going to use my little shaker here of baking soda and just add some here and there, not everywhere, just some. And we'll let that react. This is still not dry on the inside. I don't know if you can see it very well. I've been adding more too, also to the sides, not with the faux painting, but with my steel wool dirty mix. You can see a little bit, well, I can see the difference of this side where I added it, and this side where it's just faux finished. So I will keep adding that, but I'm going to move on now to starting the paint stuff. I've had to move back inside. We're supposed to have rain later today and all day tomorrow, so it's very humid outside. That is still tacky. Hit it with a dryer before we start. I had mentioned a bit ago that there are going to be 3 different painting techniques. One that is crackle, one that is peeled paint, and one that is more distressed paint. I'm going to start with the first 2, the crackle and the peeled paint. The distressed will be last. So for the crackle, I am using Pentart's Crackle Medium. This is a 1 component. You put this on over a paint, and then you paint over the top of it and you will get your cracks. Remember I said I really didn't want the silver so much to show in the cracks. I wanted the rusting color to show. So I will be placing this randomly where I have put some of the color. I'm also doing one end, so I can do a front and one end at the same time. The secret ingredient for thick peeled paint is liquid latex. Dries clear. Can be used as an adhesive. That's what we're doing here. We're using it as a block, an adhesive and a block for the paint. So I'm going to pour some out. This is a little thicker than a lot of the liquid latexes, but it'll work just fine. You need to use a brush that you don't care about because you're not going to be able to really get this out. I want to be very judicious in my placement of this, and I need to avoid where I've got my crackle. All right, I kind of want a peeled area right in here, and I want to make it as jagged as I can. I'm also just going to create some little blobs where I think paint might peel. I've let this dry for a couple of hours, and now I'm going to apply paint. I'm using Folk Art's Sage Color chalk paint. Now, I'm only going to be applying it in the little splotchy areas where I have Crackle Medium and where I have the latex, because I still have to do the third technique on distressed paint. Wanted to show here, the more of this stuff that you add, the better and better it gets. I don't know if you can see that in the light. But on this end, I added some and sprinkled a little bit more baking soda. I'll continue to do that on the inside. Now, additionally, I have applied some of the latex, and I'll be coming back to that with some paint later on. But all outer sides, 4 sides are done with the Crackle and with the latex. And I want to begin pulling up the latex. Now, you can pull it completely off if that's what you want to do. Let's just demonstrate that right here. I'll just get something to get under the tip. And you pull it off to expose your original finish. But for the majority of it, I don't really want to do it that way. What I want to do, let me grab one here. Just kind of use my hand. Okay. I got a hold of it now. I'm going to lift it up. And it goes even further. But what I'm going to do now, don't want the whole thing, is I'm just going to kind of cut a jagged edge of it. And then pull a little more here. I'm just going to use some glue, and I'm actually going to leave the latex on the piece with the paint on top. Come on. That's totally going to make it look thick and peely.
last technique for distressing paint I really like. There are lots of ways to distress paint. A lot of people will just use water and a scrub brush after they've painted and let it dry a little bit to reveal the underneath layer of paint. You really have to work hard to get that to work. There is also wax that you can apply, or Vaseline, a candle. I've done that before too. The thing I don't like about those things is you're just going to get what you're going to get. You can't control it a whole lot. So the point of this, again, is to put a barrier coat on. But if you decide you don't want to rub it back that far, you don't have to, because this barrier is not going to matter. And the barrier coat is just simple hairspray. I am only going to work one side at a time, because as soon as the hairspray dries, you want to go ahead and put your paint on. Now we let it dry. To remove the paint where I want it removed, I'm going to use a toothbrush and water. Now, I've already done a little bit right here and here. I've got my crackle here, so I don't want to go into that too much. Remove as much as you want or as little as you want. And the other thing is, as the paint starts to loosen, you know how it'll get blurry like this. I like that. I'm going to leave some of that on there. Because it'll look more like the paint has just faded over time. If you don't want that, then just use more water to remove it. ready to age this now. I don't want this paint to be this bright. So I am going to use Pentart's patina, but this is their liquid patina. It's quite strong, but I've tested it in an area and it's going to give me the look that I want. It is an oil-based product. I need to work in small sections. Now, if I want to wipe a little more of it off, I can use turpentine. This is Turpenoid. Well, y'all, we are nearing the end, and this is going to be the fun part. The new rust product that I want to tell you about. You know, I like to watch a lot of videos on YouTube related to art and different kinds of art. And one of the fields of art, I guess you would say, that I enjoy watching are people that make dioramas and do little models. You know, maybe they're gamers. I'm not a gamer. Or maybe they make trains. That's a cool thing. But either way, these model makers use some different products than just regular crafters use. So I like to watch them because I get ideas that way. Well, I watched this guy, and then I watched several other guys using this product. And one guy called it talent in a bottle. And I thought, oh, how true is that? If it works like they're showing it works, it's awesome. So without further ado, I'm going to show it to you. Oh, one other thing. This stuff will rust on acrylic or oils. I figured it would because I thought most of these model makers use like enamel stuff. But I did double check because I really wanted to use that Pentart liquid antiquing product. But it's oil-based. So I did a little test on one of the legs to make sure that it was going to work before I put the Pentart product on. And it works just fine. Now instantly you're going to see color. But as it continues to dry out, it deepens and looks even more powdery. And the product is this tiny little bottle. It goes a long way. It costs 20 bucks plus shipping, but it goes a long way. And it is by a company called Dirty Down Rust. I think they're out of UK, but you can buy this on Amazon. I would love to try out a couple of their other products. They've got one that's a patina that looks pretty cool, and so I may do that eventually if I find the right piece that I want to use it on. I've been saving this for a while, so until I had the right project that I wanted to use it on, because it is tiny. But you're going to see that it doesn't take much at all. Now, the other thing you need to have before you start is a little container of water. So I use a separate brush, one for water and one for this, because you're going to want to kind of smooth those edges out with water and blur them a bit. One other thing, it tells you to shake it. Shake it really well. Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake your bottle. Shake your bottle. Sorry, I digressed. Anyway, in addition to shaking, you're going to want to stir it. Can you hear? There's a little metal ball in there because there are particles in this and they want to settle at the bottom. But those gooey particles, ooh, wow, it's good to kind of add that on there too. I use my little stick here to stir it, and I leave my stick in there so that when I want some of the dark goopy, I can just pull up the stick and get it. See, look how, I mean, that rusted like the moment I stuck it in the bottle. You guys ready? Here we go. You want to work in small sections. So, barely dipping my brush in, taking some off. My wet brush, blur the lines a little bit. Here's some of that dark goopy stuff. Where shall we put that? How about right in here? Isn't that magic? Oh my gosh! That is not what I wanted to do. Holy cow! Dang! Well, a bunch of that's wasted. I guess I better hurry. Oh, holy moly. I'm not going to soak that up with a paper towel. Well, I had bloopers in the first video. I guess we're having them this time too. Goodness gracious sakes alive. Guess it's gonna be one of those klutz days.
You ever have one of those days? Well, I was certainly having one. It did work out. I mean, I just used all the stuff that was there and kept moving it around. And also, water will, even after this is dried, water will remove some of this product, which is why in the end you're going to have to spray it. If you use this product, you're going to have to spray it with some kind of sealer, which I do. I'll show you that. But I just keep working on this until I get it lighter and finished up.
That wasn't what I meant to do. But who knows? I'll justify and say, maybe that'll end up being the best looking side. Don't knock over your bottle. Duh. One last step to totally make this rust even more realistic is to add some rust speckles. Let's look again at this bucket. You're going to see some rusty dots. Now, to create that effect, there are a lot of pigment powders out there that you can order for this purpose. But I have a palette here of some eyeshadows that I don't use much. So we're going to create our pigment powder using some of these. And also the cinnamon mixture, which is cinnamon and cloves and dry mustard and nutmeg and a little tarragon.
My brain is scattered. Turmeric. Tarragon makes no sense.
Now for this step, you really don't want to use water. It doesn't work that well. So instead, we're going to use isopropyl alcohol. And a toothbrush. You could use your finger, but it is quite messy. So just going to flick a little bit, especially on the areas that are already rusted.